Welcome to Speaking Prowess. Are you ready to supercharge your communication skills and achieve unstoppable success? You're in the right place. Join Sifu Rafael, the visionary founder and master instructor who transforms leaders into powerful communicators, along with co-host, CEO, and best-selling author Richard Walsh. Together, they blend communication mastery with cutting-edge leadership strategies. Prepare to unlock your full potential and make every conversation count. This is Speaking Prowess.
Hello, hello. Happy Friday, my friends. How are you all?
Great. How are you?
Exceptional. Getting better every day. A little bit. Just a little bit.
Just one step every day.
That's it. That's it. That's all that it takes, right? Just a little bit of improvement every day. Richard, my friend, my co-host, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
I love that shirt.
Thank you. Remember, there's only two directions. There's forward and backwards. There's no standing still. There's no maintenance.
Well, there's also up and down. Let's consider those. Aurora, incredible human being you are. I got to tell you, your book is something that you need to read more than once.
Oh, so glad to hear that.
Turn words into wealth. And that's what we're talking about today, right? Communication. Mastering communication.
Absolutely. Communication is the keystone to everything that people want to achieve, whether it's more revenue, more connection. The right words spoken to the right people in the right order can change your life.
Oof. Yes. Also, listening can change your life.
That is very true. Yes. Yes. Most people are waiting to talk rather than listening. Waiting to talk is not listening.
Also, there's no growth when you're talking.
Yes, you already know everything that you know. And what if the other person has a gift for you? Like, what if you listened really closely rather than waiting to talk and heard something that was the gift that the universe had to give you today? So, yeah. Turning words into wealth is also about listening, although most people are focused on speaking. And most people, present company accepted, don't bother to practice speaking. They don't practice their bullet points. They don't pull out the core message. They don't pull out the wisdom from the stories of their own life or the impact that they've had, the problems that they've solved for their clients. But if you set aside time to do that and pull the gold out of all of those stories and then have little bullet points, you will be able to be so much more powerful, whether you're speaking on stage, on the telephone, in the lineup at the grocery store. And we can get into the neuroscience of communication if you'd like to, Sifu.
Oh, of course I do. Who doesn't love that, right? Dion, before we get into that, or if you don't mind, Dion, when you, and I loved how you said communication is also a verb, right? Talk to us about how important are words in your realm, because you have children. You were telling us before that it's chaos, but it's beautiful, right? It's all this things that we need to do on a daily basis, especially as a parent, and how we need to be so involved, and even listening to our children as a parent makes you a better parent.
Yeah. Yes, that is so true. There's a lot there in Aurora. I love everything you said. I think we can get together and have a great conversation over copious amounts of coffee, wine, or beer.
Sounds good.
And communication is everything and super important for me. So I train B2B sales teams. and coach and all that good stuff, leaders, particularly in a B2B realm. And so many times people want to be a leader, but they don't necessarily want to do the work or understand the work it takes to be an effective leader by title or deed. And a lot of what I talk about is you can't throw words around like confetti and think they won't land, because we can't unhear things. We can't unsee things. And so are we deliberate? Are we intentional with our words to be successful? Because words matter. And communicate and collaborate are verbs. So it implies action. It implies follow through. It implies all of that.
And everything is twice created, and the first time is with your words, with your thinking, or with your speaking.
Yeah.
We're always creating. We're always giving blessings or curses.
100%. 100%. If I may, I have a little bit to your point of a personal story that really honed this in and honed it and homed in on the importance of it. And my son was diagnosed with autism right around 5. And it's been a very interesting journey. Most of the experts are wrong, which we all know, right? Because there's just so many nuances. What was correct, though, is the very, 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 very concrete thinking. And I think what's interesting now in the time we live in is, at least, and I would love to hear what you all have to say, is so much of, at least in our world, and again, would love everybody's feedback, is so much of what I'm seeing and hearing and experiencing the world in the market right now with our clients is just give me the bottom line. Like, everybody's really operating in this concrete headspace. Give me the answer to the test. I can chat GPT it. I can Google it. I don't know how, because in this new world order, we don't necessarily know what good looks like. So a lot of what I'm seeing and hearing and what we're teaching and inspiring people to do is, okay, get the answer to the test. How do we roll it out? How do we engage with our team? How do we create a system? How do we create an inspiring, motivating environment? So that has been kind of the aha moment lately, and how it all kind of ties together. And I'm like, this is great. I can absolutely, communicate in a concrete way. So, but what are you all experiencing out there?
Well, yeah, first, if you don't mind, I just want to tell you that you're blessed that your son chose you as mom.
Oh yeah.
I work with autistic kids, and I've worked with all ranges of autistic kids, ones that could not even speak, ones that used to hit themselves. I stopped them from hitting themselves through my training and so forth.
Nice.
But it is so interesting when these children are not able to fully communicate, and that's where the frustration comes in.
Yes.
But meanwhile, those of us who can communicate and we don't communicate properly, we're even more frustrated because we don't know how.
Yes.
And for me, I have a kid, he's 24 years old, he's autistic, and his mom said to me, she actually stopped him from doing other going to his PT and so forth, because she goes, you do more for my son in a short time than he's had his whole life. So recently she said to me, my son is going to be with you until he's an old man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I said, I love your son. He's incredible.
Yeah.
And he's very, very chatty. But the beautiful thing about him is that he comes in all sorts of moods. And I'm like, what mood is he in today? So next week, actually, I'm doing something special with him. And I said, you will not get your accolade if you behave badly. He's like, oh, I'm not going to behave badly. I'm like, okay, good. But it's how we communicate, not only with somebody who has trouble understanding, but how do we communicate with somebody who doesn't have trouble?
Yeah.
But yet we're not saying the right things to them.
100%.
I know there's also such wisdom that children have. The worst thing that ever happened to me was my 33-year-old husband died. was 4. Yeah, he died suddenly, unexpectedly. And as you can probably imagine, my whole life turned upside down in that moment. And he was my best friend and my business partner and my husband, obviously.
Oh.
But what I wanted to add to this conversation about kids and communication is my son was 4 at the time. And I remember so many conversations with me where I was stretched, where I grew, where I learned something. For example, he wanted to take some special drawings to give to his father at the funeral to put in the coffin. And so he spent a lot of time, making all these beautiful drawings. And people were saying, oh, don't let him see his father's corpse. But I'd done research, and it's very important if kids want to, that they're given that opportunity to have closure. Otherwise, they think they've just vanished.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he had all these beautiful drawings, and he brought them to put in the coffin, and I lifted him up to see his father, and he just said, oh, Daddy's not in there. And he had such wisdom and clarity. He left his drawings, but he knew that Daddy wasn't in there. So we had a whole conversation about, that was Daddy's body, that was the husk. Daddy's soul is not in there. But he was my leader in so many ways with such profound wisdom. And if we can really be present and listen, as you said earlier, Sifu, there's such amazing gifts. I remember another time we brought home Daddy's ashes from in the beautiful urn. He's like, oh, well, can I open them? I was like so uncomfortable. I'm like, but who am I to say what? So it's okay. And there was a plastic bag in there with ashes. Can I feel the ashes? I was so uncomfortable, but I don't know. I've never done this before. Who am I to say I'm wiser? Sure, you can feel the ashes. So he felt them a little bit, and then he was done, and he was complete, and he went off and played. So I've learned so much from my son, and I'm sure we all could share amazing stories of what our kids have shared with us.
Richard, you've been listening this whole time. What is your take on all this, my friend?
I'm practicing. Listening is a silent form of flattery. Right? You have to know that is very important. I'll tell you, one of my best lessons ever on the listening end was actually being a podcast host. When I started my podcast about 4 years ago, it really taught me how to listen, because I didn't want to just bounce any, I've been on a lot of podcasts, and they're literally going through their list of questions. And it's like, okay, this is horrible. Okay, because as soon as they get done, well, thank you. And then you ask the next question. Well, thank you. And they ask the next question. I go, I could have just made you a video. Some of the questions, so I learned really to listen so I could formulate a question when I got done that actually, extended the conversation, right? To get more out of it. A lot of times, and sometimes people need that as well, right? You'll have guests that need help bringing out their story because they're not expert guests. Right. They're not actually great communicators. They're great at what they do. So a lot of times you have to help them. And this just by a question. If you listen, you kind of know what they're missing. They don't realize it because they're really not trained in this. And then you're able to help them pull that out and really make them look good, which is always my goal as a host, is to make my guests look great. I never want them looking bad, because nobody looks good when that happens. So I can give them the right cues. So listening really taught me to learn how to give right cues for people so they can continue the conversation. It's very, very meaningful and just riddled with value for the audience.
And Richard, by listening with such attentiveness and then asking a question that's alive in you, you're creating alchemy within your guest. You're pulling out gold that wasn't there before you were listening so attentively and presently. There's alchemy, there's magic that happens when somebody is really listening to us and then asks a question that's not just the one on the sheet, but that people go deeper. I mean, that's what I do with Same Page Publishing. I interview people to help them create their books. I love pulling out the gold in their stories. Everybody's got great stories. It's just most people haven't mined the chaff, from the wheat. Mixing my metaphors here. They haven't mined the gold.
It's okay. We're following, though. And metaphors are amazing.
Absolutely.
I think a big thing, like you're saying, though, is also practice. Okay, so if you have a story and you're going to share it and you want to go on a podcast tour, we use that as an example. Every podcast is practice.
Yes.
So I see people go on some really not great podcasts, they don't have a lot of subscribers, don't have a lot of listeners, and start practicing there. That way, when you screw up, only a few people hear it. You're not going to start at top 1%. Okay, go get really good at it, doing it again and again. What I've learned myself is all I need to know is the time frame. Do we have 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, hour and a half? Because I can fit it, so I can compress and expand my answers to fit the time frame. So there's these different levels of skill you have to develop as a communicator too. How much time do I have? And I love that. I love deadlines. I like time frames because you can tailor your message so well. And I think it was Mark Twain, right? He said, if I have 90 minutes to speak, I no preparation needed. Because if I have 15 minutes, it's going to take me, a week, to prepare that, because it's so hard to deliver in that short period of time exactly what you want. But there's an art to it, like you guys were saying.
I've been on TV and you have to get it down to 2 minutes. You really have to be prepared. You got to be on. You got to be fast. But just to piggyback on what you were saying, Richard, about going on smaller podcasts, I also think a communication skill that everybody who wants Speaking Prowess can use is, rather than thinking about how many people are listening to me, think about how can I serve? And even if one person is listening to that podcast, you might change that person's life. That might be just the message that person needed to shift to a happier place, or maybe to not commit suicide, or to have a conversation with their kid that's really listening. And so I think that is a way to shift. If we're not thinking about what's in it for me, how many people are listening, and people can shut down. But if you show up, as I am, as I'm sure we all are, intending to add value and contribute to each other and to the listeners, that's where the magic happens.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I have found by having 6 shows is that a lot of times, I had a gentleman once say, "Oh my gosh, I know you're the host, but I didn't even let you talk." And so what happened is, when people come on a show like that, it's because, once again, they just like listening to themselves talk, and not, sometimes the added value is, even as a guest, we should ask a question of the host. Sometimes we forget that with those questions, we can uncover such greatness, but we don't know. Unless we look under a rock, we will never know what's under it. Therefore, our questions are lifting that rock, looking under it. The more we ask, the higher the rock goes. So if you think about when you are engaging with another person, to have a great conversation, it's a tango. It has to be a tango, right?
Amen to that, Sifu. It's when I coach with folks and we do some of this coaching, we talk about life is a wrestling match. Communication is a dance.
That's nice.
Right. And to what you're saying is, so many times we'll get nervous. I still get nervous because, to your point, and Aurora, that's a really good point, I went from being nervous, am I going to say the right thing, to literally shifting and praying before everything, even this show, of just fill me with the wisdom and the words that somebody needs to hear. And it's amazing when you do that, whether you're a believer or not. If you put it out there and say, help me help other people, it immediately takes the focus, at least for me, like it takes the focus off of us and puts it onto our audience and helps us engage in a way that is so much more meaningful, because people said yes to hear you. So we're not doing them a service. We're not respecting their yes if we don't shed our insecurity and beef up our confidence to deliver the message we need to.
Yeah.
And I think mindset shift. Sorry, Richard.
There's a really good saying. It's, you need to be a conduit, not a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
So you want stuff to flow through you, not for you.
Yeah.
So, because I've had the guys on my show too. I had one guy, I think out of an hour, I got 2 minutes as the host. Okay. So I call it going all professor on you. I mean, he wouldn't stop. And I got done and said, man, I'm going to bum you out, but I'm not publishing this. Okay, because you just rambled on for an hour and you didn't give me a breath. So I always do things like, and everyone sets their equation, but I like 70-30. I like 70 for the guest, 30 for me. So we do a 70-30, we have a really good conversation because they're the expert. They're my guest. I want them to share the most, but they have to exchange. 50-50 is good too. 50-50 is a lot of fun because you're really you shorten those answers so both can have time. So it's very important. So if anyone's doing that kind of stuff, it's good to think in those terms because then you can tailor what you're going to say. I think that's really important, understanding that kind of stuff. But it really, again, it challenges your skill set, not just being an expert in what you do, but communicating. That's what it's all about, right? How do we do that in many different facets? That's the real challenge.
That's a really
Aurora, I gotta say that you wanted to talk about the neuroscience of communication, and I think we're actually hitting it. But let's hear it from you as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, as you mentioned, my book, Turn Words into Wealth, I go in depth on 7 different ways to make 7 figures with your message. And one of the key components is neuroscience. So most people think that the message sent is the message received, and that is wrong. So there's quite a bit to neuroscience.
They must not be married.
I love neuroscience. I love all aspects of communication. But if we can just remember how the brain works, which I can explain the 3 steps, it'll help facilitate any kind of communication. There's an email, a keynote, a podcast, a pitch, or talking to your kid even. So the way the brain works, human beings have survived for, millennia. Our ancestors have. And so we have an ancient, what I call the croc brain. And that's the first filter. So the first filter is kind of going through our crocodile brain. And it's looking for, is this interesting? Is this something to eat or something to mate with? Or is this some shiny object that I'm intrigued by? Or is this something I've seen and that's boring? So you have to get past that first filter. And that filter happens very quickly. So an example would be a book title, Turn Words into Wealth. That is appealing to the croc brain. It's the subject line in an email. It's the first line in your communication on an advertisement. Catches the attention. But then the next step is actually we've survived because we're in tribes. One human being alone in the wilderness would not last very long, but one human being with 100 friends can last very nicely in a tribe. So we have immediately our next filter is a social filter. We are always looking for cues. Who else thinks this is a good idea? Who else approves of this? Who else approves of this idea or is interested in this idea or this person? So using Turn Words into Wealth as an example again, it's won several awards. So it won Outstanding Nonfiction Book of the Year in its category, which is publishing. That meets the social criteria, social filter. So always come up with the social filter next, and you can do that very quickly. Being on a podcast, indicates that Sifu thinks we're all worth talking to and vice versa. So that's that social filter. So another example would be my new fantasy series, Magic Mystery in the Multiverse, won the Reader's Choice Award, Best Book for Teens. Again, the title, if you're interested in fantasy, Magic Mystery in the Multiverse probably grabs you. Reader's Choice Award. Oh, okay. Those are the first 2 steps. And then the third step, you can then talk to the cerebral cortex. We are only capable of deeply, deeply listening in the way that Richard talked about earlier for a maximum of 20 minutes. So you want the next soundbite to go a little bit more into depth, but only for a couple of minutes. So then the other person can speak, ask you more questions, and take the conversation one way or another. Even if you are presenting to an audience, you still want to look at audience members and see when they're leaning forward, if they're yawning, and it will help you structure where to go next, how to pause. Maybe they're looking confused, and so you want to elaborate. So everything is a conversation, even if you're the one always speaking. So when you're pitching to raise capital, you want this whole process to take no more than 20 minutes. notice that if you're going over 20 minutes, people just, even if they're wanting to listen, you're losing them. So keep it tight. But in every communication, every story, every nested story within that, you can do those three things. You know, why are you telling the story? What's the snappy croc brain? Who else thinks this is an interesting invention or something to talk about? And then add your story, your statistic, your reason why. And the other things to also consider really quickly when you're adding to is, in the cerebral cortex part, is why, how, what. These are good questions. So which one of those questions do you want to address? And then you can leave the other one for the next little soundbite.
Yeah.
Love it, love it. You know, one of the things that even if you're doing a public speaking event, it's to get the audience to think.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're not thinking, they're not engaged. So it's that engagement that we need to be able to have with our audience, whether it's an audience of one or an audience of many. And it's that engagement, because if we're just speaking to speak, but without questioning, then there is no, even if they don't necessarily answer, but in their mind, they're thinking, all of a sudden, they're engaged. So I think that engagement is also very important for us.
Exactly. To get them to think and feel. Dion got us all connected with feelings when she shared that she has got a child with autism, and it changed the whole flavor and the energy. So if you want somebody to buy something, you don't actually want to trigger their analytical thinking brain too much. You want to get people to feel why what you're saying is important and how it would be great to be aligned with your vision. Dion is laughing, so she's got something to add.
I love everything you're saying, Aurora, and completely agree. And one of the motions that one of the coaching programs that we offer is coaching sales reps. And it's really interesting. And again, would love to hear what you all are experiencing in the world. And when we're working with folks under 30, and even sometimes folks our own age, I've read The Stress Effect and Living Life from the Top of Mind. Those are really good too. And it talks about some of this. And so I'm not that person, but I'm like, I'll read it. And then how do I use this? And so to that point is, how do I simplify this? Because 9 times out of 10, people aren't like, oh yeah, I want to be a neuroscientist, right? So they're like, I want to be a YouTube influencer. Like, well, okay, I don't know what that means, but sure. And so one of the things that the format we talk with people about, and exactly, Richard, to what you're saying, is 2 sentences, ask a question. Not literally 2 sentences, but you get the idea, right? Like 2 sentences, ask a question, and come back. And we talk about, so one of the courses or one of the workshop sessions I take people through is the art of conversation. And there's 5 pieces to it, but in the middle of the conversation, it's you acknowledge, you address, and you advance. Acknowledge what somebody is saying, like you did. Oh, Dion has a son on the autism spectrum. How do you address it? She's got something to say. She brought it into us. And then how do you advance it? And then you turned it over. And so, because it's how are we training our mind to be better? Because when we are going fast or we have back to back calls, I need a muscle memory that works for me. So whether I'm a rep delivering a demo, I'm speaking at a conference, I'm on a panel, have I developed the skill set to have a muscle memory, to be a good guest, Richard, like you were saying, to engage other people? Like, so it's how are we developing more of a very disciplined, trained mind in doing what works? So that's what you were saying all that. And I was like, I love all the neuroscience behind it, because I will take accidentally successful and alignment with it. So I would love everybody's thoughts on some of that. Just how do we develop the skill set to be good, right? And go from
I think one of the things when we were talking a little bit earlier about the logic, Like you don't want to go logic when you're selling someone something, and I teach that as well. It's always benefits over features. No one cares how many BTUs and all this.
Yeah.
That's like, if the guy's an engineer, he might be into that, right? The other 99.9% of the people aren't interested really how it works.
Yeah.
They want to know what's going to do for their life.
100%.
How it's going to make things better, and when you communicate, it's the same principle in everything. Whether you're telling a story on stage or however that is, just like we'll do open loop communication on stage. Okay, I actually want to sell my coaching program. So I'll start and I'll say, okay, here's the pain. Here's the pain you're suffering. I have a solution. Now, here's my clients who went through this, and here's what their life looks like now. They can do this. They have freedom. They have more profit. They have more impact. All this stuff's really great, right? So they went from all this pain to this incredible outcome because they went through what I have. So here's the meme I made. You got, the pain scale 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Well, picture number 10 with the little face, right? He's just all scrunched up, and the middle is a lock. It's a padlock that's locked, and then the next one is another face that's all smiley with a big sun around it, and life is grand, right? The lock is my solution. So I shared the pain, I shared the outcome, right? How lovely your life's going to be, but now the solution is locked up, and you know how you unlock it? You pay me. And I help you unlock it, right? That's the method. So the open loop is share the bad, share the outcomes. The solution is what I get paid for. So it's a really interesting way to communicate, especially from stage when you're looking at, yes, we want to make an impact. We also want to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if you learn that, because I used to teach too much.
Yeah.
Me too.
I just teach everybody, and then guess what? They don't need me.
Yeah.
They can only go. So I had to learn that. A guy had to slap me a little bit and say, "You're doing this all wrong. You want to know why you don't make money? Let me show you." And he did, and it's pretty awesome. So there's so many great ways to communicate, depending on the outcomes you're looking for.
Well, that's a really great communication recipe. I call that the heaven to hell. And then whatever you're offering is the bridge. And I want to reinforce that what Richard was just sharing is actually the answer to Dion's question earlier, which is how do we become better at communicating? So I love the book, The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. And he says that he wanted to bust the myth that talent just happens. He's like, talent is grown. And there's 3 steps to growing talent. And one of them is Richard. But the first step is identifying what the person wants and why they really want it, because they have to passionately want that, whatever the thing is. You can't turn their car engine on for them while their Lamborghini is sitting in the driveway. They've got to have the engine turned on. The second step is deep practice, which Richard does with his coaching clients. I'm sure Dion does that. Sifu definitely does that, the deep practice.
100%.
And then the third step to growing talent or becoming great at anything is having a coach or mentor. So what Richard was sharing is actually a kindness, because if you just give them enough how that they go and fumble by themselves, you may not have created permanent change. Sifu, as he's working with people, changing their bodies, changing their skill set, he's creating permanent change, but only because they're in that deep practice. So deep practice happens whether it's physical or mental. We're actually creating myelin in our brains, and we can create it at any age, which is the good news.
Yes.
But the benefit of the deep practice is the myelin can go from 2 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour, or even faster with this deep practice with a coach or mentor helping. So all of us are in service of that in some way or another, but there's neuroscience to back it that we may be up leveling our clients' skill or our own skill as we deeply practice right on the edge of what we're capable of by up to 100-fold.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we all have, when you hone your skill, you become the locksmith or Richard's locks, right? So Richard, you are the key master to all the people's problems who are in front of you. And that's who we are, because everybody has a different lock. You can't open all the locks with the same key.
Yep.
We need to be a locksmith. We need to be able to open up their solutions. Take a look, and then let's talk about this in a second. Take a look.
In a world where words shape destinies and connections forge futures, this November 22nd to the 24th, Speaking Prowess brings you the ultimate hands-on workshop. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. Sifu Rafael, master instructor and founder of Speaking Prowess, blends communication and leadership to help you reach your full potential. Richard Walsh brings his strategic and tactical expertise to deliver rapid, lasting results for your business. Dr. Oliver T. Reed, the international multi-best-selling author and motivational speaker, known as the Writing Coach, will help you craft your messages with precision. Jose Escobar, a nationally recognized speaker and leader, will guide you in mastering personal development and leadership skills. This is more than just an event. It's a game-changing, skill-building experience. Walk away with communication prowess that transforms your personal and professional life. Speaking Prowess, where communication becomes your superpower. Reserve your seat now.
When we consider how we communicate, how we're all communicating, right? It's even our tonality, the intent of our words. When Aurora talks about neuroscience, it's the way we do it, right? It's how we form everything, our words, our thoughts, our skills. And when Dion talks about all that she is doing with family, with her clients, with business, and including Richard, when he's talking about how he helps somebody understand that in order to open that lock, they need to pay him. Everybody's communication skill is different. And I'm sure it is better today than it was 10 years ago. Would you agree?
Our personal skill, mine's definitely better. I think one thing you guys, when we were talking a little bit earlier about, and especially Roy, you just mentioned in deep work, right? Really that deep training, that is what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
Really for deep work. And it can be destroyed by texting. It can be destroyed by anything, right? And Deanne, when you're talking about someone wanting to be an influencer, it reminded me of this woman. I can't remember her name, but she said, well, the problem with kids, we all know that, right? We've heard that when we were kids, is we had the same problems. But the problem with kids today is they want to be discovered, not developed. Right? So, and that's that lack of deep work. They don't want to practice. And I try to remind them every overnight success only took 10 years. And they don't get it, but they just want the glory. They want the YouTube fame.
Yeah.
They don't even realize the guy with 100 million followers has been doing it for like 15 years.
Right.
It didn't start yesterday or last month or a year ago, So I think what's missing, Aurora, and you hit it really well, is deep work. People need to understand what that is, uninterrupted deep work. It's very, very difficult to get in that space for people so they can truly master what they're working at.
Yeah.
And right at the edge of your capacity, like I lifted weights at the gym yesterday, and the reps that I do at 50 pounds don't count as much as that last rep that I did at 85 pounds. And I'm like, right? Sifu knows this. And to your point, Sifu, are we better communicators? Well, I believe I'm a better communicator than I previously was. I sure hope so. But I want to just bust the myth that time alone does not make us better at anything. Richard started us off by saying, kind of there's no staying still. You're going up, you're going down. You're going backwards, you're going forward. So I think, like everything, we need to be fully engaged in something that we want to master all of the time. Yeah. Like I'm writing books all of the time. I'm coaching my clients, weekly. I am helping them. I'm pulling out the gold in their stories to help them write their books, which is what I do at Same Page Publishing all of the time. And so I'm getting better at that. I'm getting better at lifting weights because I am going to the gym, 3 times a week to lift weights. But we cannot just sit on our laurels. Maybe you were a great speaker or a great communicator or a great weightlifter 10 years ago. It doesn't make you better today. You need to be deeply engaged. You've got to want it. You've got to deep practice and have a coach or mentor. And that is how to grow your talent.
I like that too. And I love everything you all are saying. And I think, again, tell me your thoughts on this. One of the things that we're really seeing in the market now too is helping people with that level of self-awareness. And then, Richard, to your point of people want to be discovered, not developed, is literally sometimes we have to ask, whether it's the clients we're coaching, a team we're training, what do you want? And so many times there's a lack of being able to articulate it. And so one of the exercises we do, again, just to keep it really simple, is everybody creates a personal professional purpose statement. What is your purpose? What is your team's purpose? And I coach a lot of revenue teams that go, to make money. And I was like, okay, well, first off, it's a result. And secondly, the question I have for you is, what is your company's mission statement? Richard, Aurora, and Sifu, nobody knows their company mission statement.
Do you know why?
Nobody.
Do you know why?
Because it's boring.
Because it's worthless. It's stinking wallpaper.
100%.
The only thing a mission statement serves is owning. It serves his ego or her. That's all it does.
Yeah.
We build strategic vision.
Yes.
We create a vision-driven business.
Yes.
That's when people can work for purpose.
100%.
Mission statements are just throw them out with the Industrial Revolution, okay, in 1890. Throw that stuff in the trash. And I do that literally when I go to someone's business and they have one on the wall. I take it off and put it in the garbage can.
Yeah.
Like when the first I go, we're not doing this.
Yeah. Because it's not resonating. It's not that connection. Sorry, I interrupted you. Oh.
No, it's okay. No, I just wanted to throw that in because you hit the nail on the head with that. It's a cornerstone of what I do in my business coaching is create a strategic vision.
Yeah.
Everyone has to be on the same purpose.
Yep.
That's how you change culture, right? But that's communication.
Yes.
We do it in the written form.
Yes.
And they actually have to read this before they even come on the team.
Yeah.
Right? They have to find themselves in this vision. Where do you see yourself fitting here?
Yep.
Where do you see yourself as the hero in that journey?
Yes.
Right. That's what makes the difference. Right. And again, that's communication. Now they understand what's actually expected of them. Right. It goes way deeper than that, but that's a very high level. But you're right on the money with that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I'm happy you're doing that work. I work at the team level. I don't always have the patience at that executive level.
Bring me in.
Not my thing. Right. And so it's one of the, you can't help everybody. And so, but I mean, to that point is how are we getting the heart involved? Because that's where decisions are made at the end of the day. So create a purpose statement, and nobody's mission statement ever says to make money. Pretty sure that's a thing, but it's funny to your point, just we don't pay attention to it because it's nonsensical. And so it doesn't move behavior, which is what communication is supposed to do.
Well, for example, Speaking Prowess, we're doing what my mission statement is right now. We're doing it. And my mission statement and my purpose statement and my life statement is enhancing communication worldwide. That's my mission statement. That's my tagline. That's my belief. With every conversation, with every show, with every connection, I'm doing it. We're doing it right now. You are helping me. You see, I'm not doing it alone. That's the whole thing. I'm not doing it by myself. It's not just about me. If it was about me, I wouldn't even have a show. It's not about me. It's about us. You're helping me enhance communication worldwide.
Well,
because this show is being seen worldwide.
We'll see if you 27x the results of the listeners, because studies show that a story can increase revenue not by 20% or even by 2 times, but up to 27-fold. And you can read about that in the book, Significant Objects. We're close to the end of time, so don't have time to give you the story, but Sifu's mission could be increasing the value to the listeners by 27-fold. I love it.
Thank you. When we wake up in the morning, we have a conversation, don't we?
Mhm.
Each one of us. Some people have a terrible conversation. Oh, hit the snooze. Oh, hit the snooze. That's the wrong conversation, people.
Amen.
Richard gets up at 4 a.m. I do too. Sometimes it's 3:29. I can't help it. The Lord wakes me up, right? But throughout my day, I'm having these internal conversations, and those internal conversations help me with my actions. Are you having those conversations? And what do your conversations look like? Before we wrap it up, I'd love to hear.
You should hear what I say to the heavy bag every morning when I'm working it.
Love it.
It's nasty, but it makes me feel good because it's an opponent, and I'm starting my day off with a victory, even though the bag wins every time.
Well, you can send the executives and the CEOs to me, Dion, because I prefer working one-on-one with the high-up decision makers. I start my day by listening to the Prayer of St. Francis, sung by Sarah McLachlan. It's available on YouTube. It's about 2 minutes, and it's a great way for me to set the intention for the day. And I asked myself, after I got my MBA in 2015, I asked myself, how could I serve? How could I make the biggest difference in the world with my skill as a communicator, as the author of 10 books, as a TV writer, producer, with all of that, and as a successful serial entrepreneur. And the message came back to me clearly that by helping leaders who are changing the world get their message more clear, more concise, write, publish, and promote books, that would be the way that I could serve, that I could be a catalyst for greatness, that I could do the karma math of creating the most value in the world. So that's what I do at Same Page Publishing. I help leaders, experts, and entrepreneurs create their message, usually in a book, sometimes in a pitch to raise capital, so that they can be out there changing the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So many good things, so many thoughts. So I can't wait to talk more with all of you. And so just on a side note, I work one-on-one with SMB and founder coaches or founders and companies typically in the SMB world. Anything other than that, it gets a little big and not a good match, right? So it's just different skill sets for different people at the end of the day. Sifu, I love your question because I was just on a show yesterday talking about abundance. And I think it's easy, and we're wired, right? Or you probably know more about this than I do, right? But we're wired to be negative from a survival perspective. Mm-hmm. And it takes discipline and a desire to get up every day and go, thank you for everything you're going to give me. Mm-hmm. So that's how I wake up. So I wake up and I sit up in bed and I stretch and I just go, thank you for everything you're giving me. Help me to give it back. And I have my Bible app and I stick that on for a minute and I listen to the devotional of the day and just how do you kind of internalize that? Because it's easy to go through the day and maybe I'm the only one, but it's easy to go through and just be careless, I think, with other people. So it's just thank you and just bring it in so I can give it out and take care of my family at the end of the day. So
that's one word that really speaks volumes to me. It's gratitude, mm-hmm. right? Because gratitude, it's so profound if we actually just listen to the word, because the first part of it is I'm Spanish. I'm going to say gratis, right? It's mm-hmm. free. It's free. So, gratitude is free. I'm sorry, my camera got excited anytime I do this. But my camera got excited with gratitude because it's free, right? And it is, and to be grateful when you first start your day. And when you think about the word gratitude, a lot of people they're grateful for what they have, but they forget that the other part of gratitude is you. You have to give it out to others. And so we really have to look at what we're doing on our daily basis mm-hmm. with the gifts we've been given.
Amen. Yep.
I like that amen at the end.
I think we forget, right? We get into taking mode. And Richard, you mentioned that when people come on your show and go into professor mode, and I've been guilty of that too, right? And it's how, Sifu, to your point, like being on the show, we're all making each other better. I started executive groups earlier this year. We're all making each other better. We're launching sales masterminds. We're all making each other better, because nothing good grows in the dark except BS and mushrooms. And, that's cool.
Mushrooms are awesome.
But yeah, so I think we're better together, and being open to that, knowing, yes, we do need to take at certain points to grow, but there's also the jujitsu moment where you got to turn it back around and you got to give it to get.
And
you just spoke my language. Jiu-jitsu moment. Hello. Go ahead, Aurora.
This point about gratitude. I've studied happiness, as you can imagine, somebody who dealt with a lot of grief. I had to study how to overcome grief and choose happiness. One of the most powerful exercises that we can do, which takes just a few minutes, and I do it every day, is as I'm falling asleep, I don't even write it down so that I'm already in bed. There's no extra time. But as my head hits the pillow, I think about 3 things I could be grateful for that happened that day. And then if you want to, you can deepen it by adding how you showed up, one of your character traits that made that happen. So you can acknowledge yourself for choosing to show up in that manner. And just having a daily practice of ending each day, looking for what are 3 things I can be grateful for, and acknowledging how I showed up so that facilitated that. It changes your sleep, and it is one of the most lasting happiness practices you can choose. It is more effective than meditating for half an hour, and it takes a couple of minutes, but no extra time, because you're already got your head on the pillow. So,
yeah. Aurora, have you read The Happiness Project by Gretchen? I am looking at my bookshelf. It's called The Happiness Project.
I have not read The Happiness Project. This information comes from Authentic Happiness, I believe. Anyway, I've studied happiness a lot, so I'm not sure if that's the...
Yeah.
Do you like The Happiness Project? You recommend it?
I do. It was my first book in that journey. So yeah, it was very eye-opening. So yeah.
Happiness is a choice, as Abraham Lincoln would say.
Seriously, some people revolt against that idea a lot.
Yes.
Well, you got to consider that happiness, the first part is happen, right? It has to happen. And then we can decide how we're going to be about it with all the actions, all the things that are going on in the world. This is why listening to the news doesn't help you with your happiness, right? Because things are happening, but then there's no ness in it, no happiness.
The news is all of man's failures. The sports is all of man's accomplishments. So if you think about an old newspaper, it was all misery until the back pages. Then you see the accomplishments, right? And that's the news. I went on a 90-day media fast in 2009. Haven't watched it since. And I went from a 10-hour a day. Yeah, but I was a 10-hour a day news talk guy and all this stuff, and it just made you miserable. And I popped back, like I think I was out about 2 years. I was with a buddy. He had the stuff on. I listened. I go, it's the same trash. Yeah. Nothing's changed. I go, the world went on without me. Everything's good. I feel much better. They don't need me. The world doesn't need me or my opinions. Things are good. Go out and actually help people. That's what I'm going to do.
The news is already biased. If it bleeds, it leads. Yeah. And the croc brain is programmed to look for problems and danger. So it's already skewed. Yeah. So how can we balance it out? I like the approach of focusing on things that I can do something about, that within my realm of expertise or influence. Therefore, the war is not. But there are things that I can do, helping kids with literacy. For example, I'm giving away copies of Magic Mystery in the Multiverse.
Beautiful.
So that kids who might not otherwise have access can have access. I've got the 3rd book in the series on Kickstarter, but my vision is like, I was changed by reading books as a kid. It changed the rest of my life because that passion for reading sparked in me an excitement and enthusiasm about the world. And then as I grew older, every time I had a problem, I'm like, well, there's probably a book about this, and I would learn, and it changed my life. So I'm passionate about sparking that interest in youth so that they're not always on their phone, but also know that books are a great and wonderful resource. And I want to end with a 90-day challenge that anybody of any age can do. And I swear, if you do this, I think it will really change and improve your life. So read every day, even if it's only for 5 minutes. Could be the Bible, could be not the newspaper, but it could be poetry, it could be a nonfiction book, it could be fantasy. Read for 5 minutes a day. And then once a week, review what you have read, and make little notes about what you're going to do with that information. And then write every day. So read every day, could be just 5 minutes. Write every day, could be just 5 minutes. Could be just you sharing what happened, and then review it. And if you lean into that practice, after 90 days, it will shift you. You will gather the gold from what you've been reading, and you'll start to notice, wow, I'm still complaining about this thing 90 days later. Maybe I should do something about it, or maybe I just let it go, right? Whining is not going to help you. So it's a simple practice that everybody could do with 10 or 15 minutes a day, and it's life-changing.
Yeah. Richard, I'm going to say I also don't watch the news, but at one point I was making the news because every 2 weeks I was invited to be a guest on a news channel. So every 2 weeks I was there giving positive information, helping people in different ways. But I don't watch the news. The only time I ever listen to the news is when I'm driving. It's only 5 minutes, so I can know what's going on. And that's important. I think that we know what's going on in the world. As crazy as it is, we need to know a little bit about it. But watching it, it takes away. It takes away from who we are when we can be impacting instead. I want to also share with you guys that next Friday at 2:30, for our listeners, and if you're watching this on the replay, 2:30 next Friday, we're having a masterclass, a 90-minute masterclass. And one of our presenters is going to do it in Spanish. What? I know, it's going to be great. So it's going across the screen. So we hope that you join us, and we hope that you gained a little bit more insight about your communication skills today with these experts on the panel. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Have an exceptional rest of your day, everybody. Take care.
You too.
Thank you.
This is Speaking Prowess. This is Speaking Prowess.